Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Welcome to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I am J.D. Lake, filling in for Rich tonight. Well, I must have did something right. They invited me back for another one. Don't worry, though. Rich is actually going to be back on Monday. He's well. He's just celebrating a family milestone. He's going to be out for the next few days. But I'm just covering for tonight, and this is my second show, and I appreciate, as usual, everybody for getting me involved with this. And, yeah, we got a good show for you tonight. We're going to talk with Jay Thomas here in a little bit. I'll get back to who he is and why he's kind of important to why I'm even here right now. Also, we're going to talk with a little bit energy tonight, national energy. But I have I'm broadcasting, as I think I mentioned last week, from the WDAY AM 970 studios in beautiful Fargo, North Dakota. But I'm going to have Mr. Ron Ness on. He is the president up here of the North Dakota Petroleum Council, but he knows energy from a national perspective. And I look at all the articles and all the headlines in the news about when are gas prices going to come down and oil's dropping, and I don't see much happening. And we're going to talk to him about that, all things fracking, because there's a lot of fracking up in North Dakota, as well as, of course, Pennsylvania and Texas and other states, right? But we're going to talk to him about all of that. And then we're also, probably the second hour, we're going to talk with a good friend of mine, Mr. Justin Storm. He's a resident meteorologist, we'll call him tonight. And we're going to ask him some questions about the summer forecast, just what he thinks about severe weather and, the hurricane season coming up. And then also something that kind of tripped my trigger this week. I saw an article about the Arctic ice sheet in Antarctica is expanding. And thought I'd ask him about that for all those global warming folks or climate change folks out there. And by the way, full disclosure, I do believe in climate change. I just don't believe it's man-made. But as usual, we're going to be taking your calls all night as well. We're going to have plenty of time for that. Second hour, a third hour, and then we'll go into some topics as well. I got a bunch of stuff on my plate here for you. But that call-in number, by the way, is 833-482-5337. or 833-4-VALDEZ, and that's Valdez with an S, as I'm sure everybody knows. But with kind of no further ado, so I'll talk to you a little bit about Jay Thomas here. So whole reason I'm even on right now, right, is because I, from time to time, host this show up here called The Jay Thomas Show on WDAY AM 970. And it runs from 2 to 5 Central Time, Monday through Friday. Great show, just a fun show. It's not, it sometimes gets a little political, but it's really kind of just an anything show. And a good guy by the name of Jay Thomas obviously runs it. And again, I guest host from time to time. So I thought I would invite on Rich because he's on the station, right? So I invited him on that show twice last year when I was looking for guests. And he was kind enough to come on and again, must have did something right because I'm talking to you folks now. So at any rate, Jay Thomas also has a TV show that's nationally syndicated that I thought the audience might be interested in. It's called Rides with Jay. And it's he'll tell you what stations you can find it on and where you can find it. But again, I guess with no further ado, Mr. Jay Thomas, how you doing, buddy? Are you there?
Hey, J.D. Lake, how you doing, brother?
Good. So just wanted to, like I said, touch base with you because I thought, I thanked you on last week's show, but I guess you didn't hear that. So thanks again for the opportunity.
I'm usually in bed pretty early between radio and national television. I got a busy schedule.
That's right. Well, and you told me you're traveling tomorrow, so you're kind enough to come on here for one quick segment. But yeah. So I guess I've never really. I know it from the area when it wasn't syndicated, being broadcast up and around the Fargo, Minnesota area. But I guess kind of tell us how you got into it, and then where we can find the show for the audience.
Well, finding the show, I mean, we're in 150 million homes now in America, thanks to telco productions out of the L.A. area. They saw the show, picked it up. They saw it and said, "My goodness, this is a great show. Nobody's doing a car show like this." And it just went gangbusters. But yeah, it was an idea of mine. I grew up grew up around cars my whole life, and one of the local TV stations here in the Fargo market wanted to start do some local programming, and it actually was the company that owned our radio station at that time. Sent an email out, and I shot out the idea, and they said, yeah, not bad, hem and hot. And then finally, you know, how it works in media, it took about a year, and they just finally said, hey, go out and do a pilot episode. Let's see how it looks. Did it, and it just took off from there. We were up here in North Dakota. We were on all the ABC TV stations in North Dakota, I think about 4 of them. And then we were broadcasted in Minnesota, and I ended up moving over to Gray Media, which is like I think Gray's like the second largest television company in the country. And hooked up with a gentleman here by the name of Ike Walker, who handles he's VP for him, and knew he was a car guy. Called him up, and he said, "You know what, Jay? I think we want this show." And he said, "Hey, we have 113 markets in America. Let's do it. Let's sign you on over here. If we're, you know, let's see if we can get like 20 markets in the upper Midwest." He showed the head honchos actually in New York City and in Atlanta. They saw it, they fell in love with it, and said, "Oh no, we're putting this on all our markets that we can." So we ended up at about 90 of the 113 markets they have. And then after that, it went crazy. Like I said, Telco Productions, wonderful people. Picked it up, and now we are in basically every television market in America. And we just got, 2 months ago, WNBC New York City picked up the show. So the show will be on WNBC television in New York City starting in the fall.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a nice new ad. Now, I apologize. I didn't say at the very beginning. You said it, but it's a classic car show. It's a man cave show. I don't know how else you would describe it, but it's not. Yeah, go ahead.
It's not really. It's not that. It's the whole idea behind the show was there are so many guys and gals around the country that have great cars, great motorcycles. The whole premise of the show, it's if it has an engine or a motor and it's cool and has a story, you can be on the show. So that was the premise of, because we do anything from airplanes to steam thresher tractors to whatever. That's what it's about. And I thought, you know what? There's so much great stuff out there that these guys and gals will never get a chance for America to see it. That's the premise of the show. So yeah, every episode we do a segment that we call Hangout. And that's whether it's a cool shop, a cool garage. You know, it's the show is a little bit of everything, but it gives the common person that's put so much time and effort, and there's a great story behind whatever their ride is. They get a chance to show it off to America.
Yeah, and when I when I said that, I got to thinking about it. One of the shows that I watched last year was a local set of guys up here, and they dropped a Corvette motor into a Polaris Ranger, if I remember correctly, side by side. Which was kind
that
of
one I didn't get a chance. I didn't get a chance to film that one. That wasn't on my show. That wasn't me.
Okay.
You might be thinking about the Sea Boys out in Minnesota. Okay. Yeah. You're thinking of the Sea Boys. That's not what I can't remember they dropped in there, but we spent a whole day with them, and it was just so over the top. Yeah, we were on into great stuff. We have been nominated, I think, 7-8 times for Emmys, and we have now won 2 Emmy Awards. So, I mean, the show is just gangbusters. I love doing it. I love showing other people's stuff off.
Well, and the website, by the way, folks, is rideswithjthomas.tv. If you want to contact them, and maybe you have one of these rides or motorcycle or something interesting that you'd like to potentially have the show film. I know. Are you taking off tomorrow for filming, or is this something else?
No, tomorrow I'm going down to Tampa. Our son Derek has been in the Army for 16 years, 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. We're so proud of him. The Army put him through officer school for 2 years. He graduates on Friday, comes out as second lieutenant, and actually he's then getting stationed up in upper state New York for 3 years, another place. He's been all over the country and the world, but he's going up. Is it Fort Drum up there, I believe, or Drummond up there? He's going to be up there. So we get to go down there, and here's the great part of it. Our other son, Ty, is in the military. He's out now, retired from it, but he's the one that's going to do the handoff and the pinning in his full dress uniform. So we are so excited to go down there. But we will be, end of June, we're flying out to the Cape Cod area to film out there for a week. And there's some crazy, we had so much stuff from that area that people sent us. We're like, we got to go out there and film. So we're going to be out there on the East Coast end of June. And the best way to get a hold of me, you can go to rideswithjthomas.tv, but you can do that, or you can just direct or private message me on my Facebook account. Usually I get to those quicker, and that's just look for J. Thomas I'm in West Fargo, and you'll see ride stuff on there. That's the best way to get a hold of me because you're going to get a quicker response.
And he's got a very cool logo of a couple pistons with the Rides with J. Thomas. And if you want to get any merch too, you can go on either page and talk and potentially get some of that. One last question for you. As far as anything, you mentioned the Cape Cod coming up. Any other media mentions you want to, you mentioned WNBC. Anything other special coming up we should know about this year?
Well, the new seasons always start in September. And it just depends on the market. Like I said, we are now in every TV market in America, but it varies. We're on ABC stations, we're on NBC stations, we're on Fox stations, we're on digital. It just depends. And you can see old episodes. We don't push it too hard because we want people to watch it on TV, but we do have a YouTube channel. Just Google that on YouTube. You can watch us. I believe we're on Hulu, we're on Amazon Prime, we're on Roku. We're basically on all those platforms as well. But yeah, we like to have people watching it on terrestrial television. So yeah, it just depends on the market you're in. So check your local listings. And again, the show airs 52 weeks a year. We just run the old seasons, but the new season starts in September across America.
And you're still doing the outtakes at the end, right?
If one episode we forgot to put the outtakes in.
Oh, I'm sure you heard about it.
We have never had more response from people than that episode wanting to know what happened to the outtakes. So, yeah, you always got to see. Yeah, the outtakes are fun.
Yeah, that's a signature thing at the end of the show, folks. You want to watch that. So, yeah, again, rideswithjthomas.tv, or you can get a hold of him, J. Thomas at West Fargo on his Facebook page. But, yeah, thanks for joining us for a little bit. I know you got to go. So. Yeah,
I also got a Rides Facebook page. But, yeah, get on both pages. Yeah, just like it and follow it. And, if you got something cool, airplane, motorcycle, boat, whatever, if it has a story, reach out to me, send me some pictures, send me some contact information, and you never know. My producers may be calling you, and you might be next one on the show in New York City. I'm excited to be out there, man. And I got to tell you, J.D. Lake, dude, I'm proud of you. You fill in on my radio show from 2 to 5 Central Time, which you can listen to on our app or on your smart speaker. But you, my friend, I'm so proud of you. I've been doing this for 40-plus years, the radio thing. You started doing it, about a year ago? And look at you on Rich's show. You're a rock star, brother. I'm proud of you. Man.
Well, thanks so much. For joining. Yeah, people, check our audience, check that out. You'll really like his show. It's a great show. And when we come back, we'll be talking with Mr. Ron Ness. He's the president of the North Dakota Petroleum Council. And we're going to talk all things energy for a little while here. And, go nowhere, folks. We'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I am J.D. Lake, filling in for Rich tonight. Our next guest here, we were going to talk a little bit of energy. I thought it would be kind of a good topic because, we're up here in North Dakota, right? That's where I'm broadcasting from, AM 970 WDAY Studios. And I thought it would, like I said, be a good topic, not just because of energy here, which is very important and people in this market know that, but energy as a whole right now across the country is a pretty big deal, right? You hear it every day in the news, and I just heard another thing, and we'll talk with Ron in a second here about that, but I heard another thing about AI. Everybody's hearing AI all over the place, right? Well, one of the things that you may not know about AI is it takes a tremendous amount of energy. And so there are other countries that are building nuclear power plants left and right just to power the AI. I'm not kidding. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about fracking. You hear about, the oil prices going up and down and when our gas price is going to drop. But with no further ado, we'll talk to Mr. Ron Ness here. He's actually the president of the North Dakota Petroleum Council up here. So I thought he'd be a good person to ask these questions to. How you doing there, Ron?
JD, thank you for having me. It is an absolutely fabulous day and evening in western North Dakota. North Dakota is an energy powerhouse, as you know, and you're on top of it talking about AI. We recently had Kevin O'Leary here, and he was all about power and all about AI and how are we going to power AI. And it is certainly one of the hot topics across the globe, as you mentioned right now. But North Dakota is an oil and gas powerhouse. Of course, we essentially cracked the code on how to produce oil out of shale here a little over 20 years ago in the Bakken in North Dakota, producing over 1.2 million barrels of oil a day, 3.5 BCF of gas a day. And, of course, it's driven our economy. It's driven our it's driven our state into a whole new era of opportunity, and people from across the globe have come here to invest. And obviously what we have done is then been taken to the Permian Basin in Texas and the Anadarko Basin in Oklahoma, the Powder River Basin in Wyoming, and of course that's a combination of extended reach horizontal drilling. We drilled 2 miles down and 2 miles out, now 3 miles, soon 4 miles out, reducing the environmental footprint, but most importantly, unlocking that oil that has been there really for 370 million years ago in the Williston Basin. It was formerly a shallow sea, and that plant and organic matter has, culminated into this incredible energy opportunity for our country. And we're glad to be back under the Trump reign to, those punishing 220 regulations that we were imposed upon us were devastating, frankly.
Of course, and tell people a little bit too that aren't familiar with North Dakota. I mean, you mentioned the Bakken. Of course, I know that name left and right. Nationally, people may not, but no. And how many barrels of oil do we think is in the Bakken fields out in western North Dakota?
Well, we think there are 300 million barrels of oil in the Bakken. We've produced 5 million. We're going to get another 5 million. So out of every 100 barrels of oil in the ground today, with the best technology in the world, the brightest minds in the world, we're leaving 85 out of every 100 barrels of oil in the ground, and it's simply a function of investment, price. Most importantly, this is a technology play now. It's all about tech, developing new techniques to get that ground. Again, you're going down 2 miles, you're turning that drill bit horizontally, you're going out 2 miles, out 3 miles. You got to figure out how to connect more of that rock. That rock is a very dense rock, much like the cement in your driveway, and you got to figure out how to get the oil out of it.
Well, we'll hold that thought there. We'll come back from break, and I want to talk a little bit more about how we, how you get some of that out with the fracking, and just some of the outlook now that Trump's in the White House. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're talking with Ron Ness here from the Petroleum Council. We'll be back in a little bit.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Welcome back, everyone. I am J.D. Lake filling in for Rich tonight. He is, don't worry about that. He's actually celebrating a family milestone for the next few days, so he'll be back in on Monday. And I think he's even going to maybe tell you what that family milestone is, but we're going to keep it under wraps for now. I got the ship tonight. You can call us, by the way, 833-482-5337, or that's 833-4-VALDEZ, and that's Valdez with an S. So we're talking here before break with Ron Ness. He is the president of the Petroleum Council of North Dakota, but we're talking energy on a national basis, right? And we were talking before break. I think everybody knows that, I said, maybe we should define fracking. It's horizontal drilling as opposed to vertical drilling. And we do a lot of it up here in North Dakota, but there's a lot of it that happens elsewhere too. And he mentioned some of those areas. I guess, you were talking a little bit about Trump in the last segment and, all the regulations that came on during Biden. I guess, what do is it really just the deregulation that's helpful now? Or what can you pinpoint that, gosh, I'm just so happy Trump's back in?
Well, I think, J.D., it was evident from day one of the Biden administration that they were going to go to the farthest extremes to essentially try to destroy America's energy system and drive up the price of energy to make their agenda come true, which is, renewables, electric cars, windmills, all of those things that we need. But they're intermittent supplies, and they're going to drive up the price of energy. And ultimately, we saw what that did to inflation on day one. President Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. I was up in Alberta, Canada last summer. That is a 50 to 80-year supply of Canadian energy that was going to travel through our country to Texas, displace Venezuelan crude and crude from other unfriendly nations. That supply now, Canada has built a pipeline to the West Coast. It was going to California. Now it's going to the Middle East or, Asia, places like that. There's American energy at a time, 50 to 70 years. Who knows? We needed that today. That's a different type of crude oil than we make in North Dakota or Texas, critically. So from that point forward, the Biden administration, every single day, they woke up trying to put America's oil and gas industry out of business. They tried to increase the costs of energy, cost of producing that. 220 different regulations that were all just punitive, duplicative, with no environmental benefit placed upon the industry. So exit Biden, enter Trump. All of a sudden, immediately, what's the focus? The geopolitical value of oil and gas. Of course, another thing Biden did was basically halt the shipment of exporting natural gas to our friends in Europe, which is the most insane thing. If they don't get it from us, they're going to get it from Russia. So, the Biden administration, former North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum is the Secretary of the Department of Interior. Chris Wright, an oil and gas executive that really cut his teeth here in North Dakota, is the head of the Department of Energy. This is the energy dominance pathway we're on here. You're going to slash regulations, get back to common sense, get back to investing in America, creating jobs, and at the same time create cheaper and more reliable energy sources for Americans, and, of course, feed our global allies across the world the energy that they so badly need from friends like America, not foes like Iran and Iraq and Russia and other places like that. So it's pretty simple stuff, really.
Well, I know we were doing a pre-interview call, and I was talking to you back to the pipelines, and I said, are we going to do anything with Keystone at this point? You said, no, that thing's finished. And, we had our chance. And what's so funny about that, I think, is that Canada, and we have a lot of Canadian listeners. We had somebody from Montreal last week, and I think even a friend of mine, her name's Lisa, might be listening. But there's a lot of Canadians that are conservative, but by and large, a lot of Canada is liberal. And it's interesting, even the liberals want the oil pipeline, which I thought it was kind of interesting, is that, that's running now across like you said, the majority of Canada to the West Coast. But we do have the Dakota Access Pipeline, which, again, had its own fanfare when it comes to protests and so forth. And just a quick stat about that for the folks listening. I remember so keenly on this is we had Greenpeace and everybody in the world up here protesting that pipeline being built, as they would have with Keystone and any others. And just a fun little stat for that from the audience is that there again all these very earth-loving people, right, that are protesting these things that yet they're driving cars and flying in planes, and that's a whole nother another story. But what was interesting is at the very end of that protest, Ron, and I'm sure you're very familiar with this, they hauled out 300 truckloads of garbage from the site where these protesters were. Think about that. 300 truckloads of garbage for these people that were so environmental, and I just thought that was obscene. But going back into, kind of the everyday person that's listening to the show right now, I know we talked a little bit about this, but just, people, it's constantly in the news and on videos. I know I see on X and other places, when are gas prices coming down? And as I looked at the station on the way in today, they are coming down in Fargo here. They're down to about $2.69, and I believe that WTI, which is not, obviously, I don't think shale oil, but WTI closed today at 58.36. Obviously there's a break-even point with when we talk about shale oil, but what's your take on gas prices in general and what you'd like to see them do so that we're successful as a nation with fracking?
Well, sure, and that Texas pipeline today carries almost 700,000 barrels a day of homemade North Dakota American oil from North Dakota into Illinois and then down to Louisiana Gulf Coast, where 70% of our nation's refining capacity exists. So, WTI certainly is shale oil. We receive a discount off that of about $7 just from being in the middle of North America and our ability to get that oil to where it needs to be refined. So, oil prices in and around $50 a barrel today in North Dakota. That's the price, obviously lower than what we would like to see in terms of attracting investment. But again, the realities of eliminating those regulations and getting back to a business climate in which you can thrive is so critical that I think that this will all shake out over time. And I do think, gasoline prices are going to be lowering. But I think the big thing, the hidden cost for Americans is really the cost to heat your home. It's the electricity cost. It's the cost of natural gas. It's the cost of electricity coming into your home, again, because we had shifted so far away from coal. We have an 800-year supply of coal in North Dakota. The way we produce coal and process it into electricity is extremely safe. It's extremely clean. And it's just an absolute shame that they're putting the coal guys out of business. So intermittent wind power, solar power, those things are costly, subsidized by the federal government to almost 100% of the cost of the differential between coal. So it's made economic, but we as consumers pay that difference. And of course, when you look at the America trade between energy across the border with Canada and U.S., we are absolutely incredible. We take a lot of Canadian gas. We take a lot of Canadian oil into America because everything doesn't come neatly into Philadelphia or neatly into Louisiana Gulf or wherever those refineries are. So you got to move product as sometimes the topography and the ability moves, and there's different types. But I think energy prices and inflation are going to continue to trickle down, and obviously the Republican administration is using energy as a tool to try to lower inflation. But I think ultimately, we need to get that world economy up, and we'll find that sweet spot once again where we can continue to attract investment and produce more energy in America, but have reasonable and affordable energy prices.
Yeah, and if you, while I'm asking this, if you might be able to get near a window too, we're getting a little clipping on your cell phone, I think there, but I want to ask when we come back from break. There was some renaming, as you know, of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America now, and I heard that was a little bit regarding some of the. I mean, I think he wanted to do that in general, but I also heard that it might have something to do with gas leases and oil leases down there. So when we get back from break, folks, I want you to hold that answer for now, and we're going to talk with Ron Ness some more. He's the president of the North Dakota Petroleum Council. And we'll find out that and some other things. We'll still take your calls, 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ. Go nowhere, folks.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Welcome back, folks. I'm J.D. Lake filling in for Rich tonight. He is out, and he'll be back on Monday. He's actually celebrating a family milestone, but he'll be out for the next couple of days. Well, we're talking with Ron Ness, who is the president of the North Dakota Petroleum Council, and we're talking about energy. And before break, we were talking about, I put a question out to you about the renaming of Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. Now, there's some other branding that Trump wanted out of that, but I heard that's also a way potentially to skirt around some of the oil and gas leasing. Am I wrong on that? Is that just a rumor, or was there any truth to that?
JD, I think you're spot on. And, of course, the Biden administration had essentially shut down the exploration for new oil and gas in the Gulf. And that Gulf of Mexico is just absolutely critically important to the daily supply of oil and gas across this country, and of course, extremely valuable reserves underneath that Gulf of America. And by changing that name, I think it did a number of things, but many of the regulations were very specific to the Gulf of Mexico. So when you change it to the Gulf of America, those regulations don't really match up. So I do think that the Trump administration pulled a little bit of a wordsmithing maneuver there, which is extremely beneficial. But especially those Louisiana, Mississippi, those Gulf states, and I think just from a standpoint of North Dakota, it's important for listeners to understand. Over 50% of every dollar that the state takes in tax revenues comes from oil production taxes. It drives our economy. It's 32% of our state's GDP. This oil, of course, is feeds the country in terms of its daily oil supply, and we produce enough natural gas here to supply the entire Midwest with natural gas. We're looking at value-added opportunities to create fertilizers, plastics, but primarily right now, a lot of that gas is going to be used for AI. I think in the future, that's the big opportunity. And JD, you and I have discussed this in the past. I've had people from all over the world here to tour North Dakota's Bakken oil fields. I've got a group from top Jewish Americans from New York City that are going to be coming back in June. They've been here time after time again because the geopolitical value of American energy is so critical across the world and the globe. And those folks, those Jewish Americans, understand what it means to Israel to have an ally with incredible energy reserves, and that's why it interests them to know that where they're going to get their energy from going forward, and that America can supply that energy to places like Israel. So tremendous opportunities in America for energy development, and our citizens are going to need every source of energy. And certainly what the previous administration did was they tried to essentially crush oil and gas and coal and force us all into a world of renewables, which the reality of that, I think we all know that was a bit of a farce. And I think the shades are off, and it's go time for American energy going forward, in my opinion.
Amen to that. And just back to that name change for a second for the audience. Again, when you hear Trump doing things like that, I know people kind of ridiculed him at first, like, change it to Gulf of America? Like, why in the world would he do that? Or why in the world would he go after the Panama Canal or Greenland or any of these things? There's a method to the madness, folks. I always say, he's smart like a fox. And he's definitely playing a higher level game of chess than most people think. Just something, too, on the fracking. I think, this is my own question. I have to imagine people are thinking about in the audience. You often hear regarding any of our oil here in the States, but particularly with the shale oil, that we're exporting it to all these other countries, as you were just talking about. But why do we export so much of our oil, but yet we also import so much? Why don't we just keep the stuff that we have here and refine that? And maybe you can answer that.
Sure. We actually export a lot of natural gas because we have large supplies of natural gas, and you can liquefy that natural gas and get it all over the world in relatively good economics. Oil is a very unique substance, and oil refineries are made like cookie recipes. Every refinery may have a different type of oil that it needs. So some of the refineries in the middle part of America require heavy sour crude oil like they now have in Canada. The North Dakota light sweet Bakken crude oil fits very well for the refineries in the Louisiana Gulf because they always got their oil from OPEC, Libya, those types of nations that made that oil. So London and England require a lot of diesel fuel in their economy, so you'll see a lot of diesel fuel exported from those Louisiana-type refineries into England because that's the economy they run on is diesel fuel. So, of course, you've got Rocky Mountains, you've got large seaways, you've got things that really make getting oil from A to B, and typically an oil refinery which refines the crude oil into gasoline, diesel fuel, and jet fuel, and then other things that make cement and asphalt and all of the things that basically everything that you and I are touching or wearing or talking on right now is a derivative of oil or natural gas. So those commodities got to get to where the population centers are. So a lot of that sometimes is just sourced in different ways. So by and large, we keep the most of our crude oil right here in America and refine it into products that we use every day. We bring in a fair amount of Canadian crude oil because it just matches with those refineries. Otherwise, you need to get that, as I said, Venezuela, other places. So it's kind of a fungible product, and it just doesn't all fit into one area, and you can't supply the whole country from certain areas.
Yep, and we're going to, if you keep you for just one last segment here, we're going to come back with Ron Ness. He's the president of the North Dakota Petroleum Council, and I wanted to know after the break what you kind of see coming up for technology changes, whether it's nuclear, whether it's oil and fracking and so forth. Kind of what do you see in the future here? But I'm hosting for Rich tonight. I'm J.D. Lake from WDAY AM 970 North Dakota, and go nowhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Welcome back, folks. This is J.D. Lake filling in for Rich tonight. We're talking with Ron Ness here. He's the president of the North Dakota Petroleum Council. And you can reach him at ndoil.org or anything you want to know about some of the energy topics we're discussing tonight. We went to break, Ron. We got a couple minutes here. I was going to talk to you a little bit about where do you see the future going, in not only fracking, but also just even nuclear. And I know you mentioned some refineries before the break. I mean, are we putting up any new refineries anywhere in the country?
JD, I think this is just a topic that Americans need to discuss on a regular basis. You've seen what's happening in California. The regulations there are punitive. Oil refineries are closing. That is a significant concern, obviously. Tremendous resources in that state, but they continue to just push and push and push, and you see these refineries go out of business, and gasoline in California is probably in excess of nearly $6 a gallon today. So I'm a huge fan of nuclear. I think that permitting and getting nuclear across the finish line at scale is very, very challenging across this country. Small nuclear reactor facilities, I think, have an opportunity. You're going to see us unleash natural gas in America. The demand for AI and the power that AI companies are going to need. You are seeing, large entities like Microsoft now consider themselves, energy companies or power companies because they understand that their products only work if they have reliable 24/7, 365 power for them. So we're going to see more and more demand growing across this country. So obviously oil is still king. It is going to continue to be king. 65% of our daily energy needs are still oil and natural gas, and so coal's behind that. But we're going to need everything. We're going to need wind. We're going to need solar. Everything we can get, we're going to need it all, but we just have to be smart about it. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate that. You can reach Ron at ndoil.org. We'll be right back after the break with some topics and some calls. Don't go anywhere, folks.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. I'm J.D. Lake. I'm sitting in for him out of the wonderful WDAY AM 970 studios in Fargo, North Dakota. And we're into our second hour here. We have a couple more guests. The bottom of the hour, we're going to talk with meteorologist Justin Storm. Yes, that is his real name, folks. We're going to talk to him about that. And but we're going to talk to him, though, about how what he sees for the severe weather outlook for the summer. Maybe some hurricanes, tornado, those kinds of activities, as well as I saw an article today about the Antarctic shelf is actually gaining ice now, which is interesting, and it has been for a few years. So we'll talk a little bit, maybe some global warming, climate change. And then, we'll get into some other topics here. Kind of starting this off today, I don't know if you saw, I was on last week's show on May 1st, and we were talking a little bit about the market, but I want to go a little deeper in that in the first segment here. So today, I don't know if you saw, Jerome Powell came out, and the Fed chairman, and he announced what he wants to do on interest rates, and we'll play that clip right now for you.
Doesn't affect our doing our job at all. So we're always going to do the same thing, which is we're going to use our tools to foster maximum employment and price stability for the benefit of the American people. We're always going to consider only the economic data, the outlook, the balance of risks, and that's it. That's all we're going to consider. So it really doesn't affect either our job or the way we do it.
So that was actually in response to, when he just talked about in the beginning about Trump, putting pressure on him, and that was the question to him. And, he can see, he said he's not going to succumb to that pressure. And if you know how the interest rates work, right, it's how high the inflation is, what the jobs numbers look like. And the jobs numbers have been pretty good. Actually, there was a good tick up last month, and the note with that, it was from the private sector. That there was actually some decreases on the federal side, which is what we want, right? I mean, we want to decrease the size of federal government so that you can, more money is obviously going back in your pocket, because every federal job, people forget, that is a burn on tax money, right? We don't make money from federal jobs. So the more of them there are, the more federal bloat, the more our taxes go up, right? So that's how interest rates are driven. And I know why Trump wants them down, right? I mean, even if it went down a quarter point, right? It would be explosive to the markets. But again, I don't know if he's going to get his way with federal Powell, or not. He doesn't seem like he's going to take the pressure. But then I've heard that Trump keeps saying, I don't want to fire him, but he's also not happy with him either. And interesting too about the news. I was looking at the news last week, and we were talking about that, and I just want to kind of highlight this one stat again. The day I came on for the show there, we woke up to a headline in the morning about, negative a GDP. It was just slightly down, right? Just not even a percent. It was I think it was like a 0.2% or maybe half, but it went down, right? So woke up to the economy shrinking, and, the market's down 800 points. Again, folks, it's not, the sky is not falling, right? Cooler heads need to prevail. And we talked about this, and just kind of remind you again so that day, that's what happened. At the end of that trading period that day, it was 141 points higher. That's the Dow. There was actually a clip out there we're going to play too from Scott Bessent. So Scott Bessent was talking about some of this negative stuff going on in the news when it comes to obviously, and it could be anything, interest rates, or in this case, the markets being up and down. And, I saw a few articles on this, and essentially, how we started out April with the NASDAQ as an example, and how we ended it was about the same, right? I think it was at the point of this conversation we're going to play here in a second, he was talking about how the NASDAQ was up, from 10 days ago when they said the sky was falling and we're going to go into recession. But I think the NASDAQ, for all the turmoil last month with the markets, ended up losing a little less than 1% at the end of it. Again, not bad, and certainly not correction territory. So again, the sky is not falling here, but let's listen to hear what Scott Besson was, by the way, on with Martha Raddatz. Obviously, she's no conservative, so you'll hear that at the end here.
When I look at some of the things that are being published, there was a story 10 days ago that said this is the worst April for the stock market since the Great Depression. 10 days later, the NASDAQ is now up in the month of April, and I haven't seen a story that says, "Oh, stock market has biggest bounce back ever." So
it certainly has gone back and forth.
I think a lot of this is media driven.
Yeah, and you heard Martha at the end kind of losing her cool with it. Well, it's always up and down. Well, they don't say that, right? They say that, oh my gosh, because of Trump's terrible policies and the tariffs are going to ruin the world and infuriate all of our trade partners, etc. And look what happens. It doesn't happen like that. But then when again it starts to go the other way, you just see, wow, they go up and down all the time. It's no big deal. Kind of reminds me, I mentioned last week, I think too. Some of you might have saw this with Chuck Schumer, right? There was a conference where he's talking about polls, and he was saying, well, Trump's poll numbers are going down, and this is where they're going and where they were, and yeah, it's falling apart, folks. And then the first question out of the crowd, by the way, from the liberal media was, do you know, Senator, that the Senate's polling numbers right now are down to 17%. That's far below where Trump is. Well, polls go up and down. You kind of see the theme, right? It kind of goes back and forth. What else we got here in the news? We were talking before the break, we were talking energy with Ron Ness, and I wanted to kind of sneak one point in. He brought up that I thought was kind of interesting. This kind of like went in and out of the news months ago because we were talking about how much energy AI takes, and I don't think people really grasp that how much it does take. Right? It takes a tremendous amount because AI needs high computing power, quantum computing, and even the next level of that. And it's really fascinating when you dig into it again on the power needs. And it was interesting. He mentioned at the end, we were talking nuclear, right? And putting up nuclear plants, and it's hard getting past the regulations and so forth. And I think they'll get through some of that in this administration. However, what was interesting to me is 3 Mile Island. Everybody remembers that, right? That's the bad accident in New York, right? Where there was a partial, I believe it was a partial meltdown back in, it was 1979. And I saw here that Microsoft, and I thought he was going to talk about this, Microsoft is actually thinking about reopening 3 Mile Island. I didn't even realize that's a possibility. But there's an article here talking about, again, none other than AI, right? That Microsoft needs that high power need to control, rather power their AI data centers. So I just think that's such an interesting story, and obviously to so many of the people out there in the audience that with nuclear and so forth. And again, nuclear is very safe. The greater part of the world, particularly in the UK, that's all they have, right, is nuclear power. And I just find it ironic that we're so against, all these environmentalists are so against all of these various things, whether it's clean coal. I mean, the coal that we burn here, by the way, is far cleaner than what they're burning in China and all these other places. China's putting up coal plants left and right, and they don't care how clean the coal is. But we're shutting even the clean coal plants down, right? And same thing with nuclear. It's impossible to get a nuclear plant up, but yet they're popping up all over the world because of, again, these AI needs. And if we want to stay relevant, we better be doing the same. Same thing goes obviously for other power, and we've talked about that with oil, et cetera. But we're going to go to break here. We're going to come back in just a second. We're going to take your calls too. So we have, let's see, we'll take some calls after the break. You can dial us at 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ, and that's Valdez with an S. And we'll be back. I'm J.D. Lake. Guest hosting for Rich. He's actually out just through Monday right now, or into Monday, I should say. He'll be back on Monday. He's just got a family milestone that he's celebrating. So I'm hosting all night for him, and go nowhere. We'll be back in a moment.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
I'm J.D. Lake filling in for Rich tonight. Rich will be back on Monday. He's out for a few days for a family milestone, but I'm going to be piloting for the rest of the evening, and we've been talking some energy. We were just talking liberal media a second ago. Also want to just do a shout out to some listeners. I know I mentioned before, we got some listeners up in Canada tonight. I'm sure of it. So thanks a lot for listening up there. But it was interesting. We were talking before the break about the liberal media, and I found this clip. He's just kind of an everyday guy. I think it's like a lot of people on this show or listening to this show that are just listening and trying to sum up what's really going on and why the media won't say what's really going on, right? It's not going to look good for them. And I just love, all these people just in the administration just can dismantle the media. I mean, whether it's J.D. Vance or Stephen Miller, you name it. But again, when an everyday guy comes out and just talks about it, I think it's kind of a neat thing. And so we're going to play that clip right now and let me know what you think.
The jobs numbers came in better than expected, and the Trump administration is pushing the Fed now to reduce interest rates. We've had 3 consecutive months of lower inflation when you guys told us that Donald Trump was going to drive the cost up and your egg prices are going to be so expensive. You guys haven't said anything about the fact that China has quietly rolled back many of their tariffs and publicly stated they're willing to discuss tariffs with the United States. You haven't said a single thing about what Donald Trump has been doing with Whitmer up in Michigan, even though she's a Democrat. You definitely haven't said anything about the Ukraine minerals deal, which also excludes any country that supported Russia during the conflict, as you said Donald Trump was a Putin supporter. You haven't talked at all about what India and Brazil just did and how that affects the BRICS nations. You're really quiet about Ford talking about opening 2 new plants in the United States. You've been very quiet about the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been pledged to the United States from foreign nations. Could you imagine if you supported the president just a little bit? Every single night, all I see on the news is negative, 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 and what if. They never actually tout what he's actually done. Could you imagine if they just once out of 100 times?
Yeah, can you imagine if they did do that, right? I mean, how you almost wonder sometimes, and I mean, I'm sorry, like I don't mean to, I know it drives people crazy when you say the enemy of the state is the media. I'm with Trump on that, from the previous time he was in office, and he's a little softer now, but still, fake news and with CNN, et cetera. I almost think, are they literally cheerleading the downfall of this country? And I mean, it can't be ignorance. There are some smart people in the media. There's some that aren't, but there's definitely some that are. And this guy gets it, and he brought up a lot of great points. And I mean, some of the things that's going on right now with what Trump's doing, and I mentioned this last week with the tariffs, right? Everybody knows this is kind of resetting global trade, really, not just our own. But there's just so much going on right now that is resetting, and whether it's just little headlines I caught. I saw something about Temu in the headlines today, and they were talking about T-shirts, right? And they get a lot of their T-shirts from whichever country it was. It wasn't not the U.S. And the excuse me, the point of the article is Temu said they're going to now start sourcing these from the U.S., right? So somebody in manufacturing in the U.S. is going to now provide their T-shirts. That's the point, folks, to get American manufacturing and to not tariff that. We want to encourage people to come here and manufacture. I don't care where they're from in the world, and you want to give them a prize. Essentially, we're not going to tariff you, and that's why you see billions and billions of dollars of investment happening. Same thing with Ford. We played that clip last week, right, where the CEO of Ford said, look, we're already making most everything in the country anyway. There's a little bit here, from Mexico, but we're going to, and just what this gentleman just said, we're going to open up 2 new plants here. You've heard other car manufacturers say the same exact things. So this is happening, and it's it's going to be a little pain in the beginning, and I think we probably hit the majority of that. But again, I think it's going to turn around here all year long, and we're going to be like, why didn't we do this before, right? A couple other things I wanted to play here before the break. And by the way, at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be talking with Justin Storm, my meteorologist friend, and he's going to talk about the summer outlook, what it's like for severe weather and hurricanes, and we'll talk a little global warming, climate change here coming up. But I want to play a couple other things. So Trump was talking yesterday, and this is when I think he had the I don't know if Mark Carney from Canada, I can't remember who was with him, but he was teasing essentially something that he's going to announce, and we'll play that clip right now and see what you think.
A very, very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets, and I won't tell you on what, but it's going to, and it's very positive. I'd tell you if it was negative or positive. I can't keep that out. It is really, really positive. And that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave. But it'll be one of the most important announcements that have been made in many years about a certain subject, very important subject. So you'll all be here.
So I'm just opining. Nobody knows if this is it or not, but I have another clip of him talking about something, and I'll play in just a second, what it might be. However, he did say in that clip Thursday, Friday, and or Monday next week. So I'm interested to hear, especially since it's positive news. Gosh, we could use that. And I'm going to talk about a little later, probably hour 3, about some of the, positive, but also just we need that, right? I mean, there's just so much divisiveness. And I talked about last week's show about, we need to pull together a little bit and find out what we all can agree on. There's things we're obviously not going to agree on, but anyway, this is what he said. I think this was from today. This might be it, but this doesn't seem big enough for me, but you tell me.
Before we begin, I'm pleased to announce that I've just signed a proclamation officially designating tomorrow, May 8th, as a Victory Day for World War II, commemorating the 80th anniversary of America's victory in the Second World War. All over the globe, our World War II allies are celebrating this week, but the United States has never joined in with the proper celebration of our own, and the victory was mostly accomplished because of us. Whether you like it or not, we came into that war and we won that war, and we had a lot of help from a lot of great people, a lot of great allies. But I think there would be nobody that would say that we were not the dominant force in that war, and we don't celebrate it. And I think that's a great disservice to the people that lost their lives and people that fought so hard in winning World War II, and also a separate Victory Day for World War I, and we're going to be doing that too. It was American tanks and ships and trucks and airplanes and service members that vanquished the enemy 80 years ago this week. Without America, the liberation would never have happened. And so we have to pay tribute and homage to those people that gave us victory.
What do you think, folks? Do you think that's it? I don't know. I'm kind of mixed. I think there might be something a little bit more. Give us a call after the break, 833-4-VALDEZ or 833-482-5337. We'll be back in a moment with Justin Storm, our meteorologist.
No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I'm J.D. Lake, sitting in for Rich tonight. He'll be back on Monday. I am just here for this evening, but there'll be some other guest hosts for tomorrow and Friday. But right now we're going to be talking with Justin Storm. He is the resident, I'm calling him the resident meteorologist. He's my meteorologist friend. But he's got a really good pulse on kind of what's going on nationally. I thought it would be kind of nice as we're getting close to Memorial here to have him on to talk a little bit about, kind of what the severe weather outlook might look like. Maybe you're thinking, if you're on the coast, you're thinking about hurricanes, what they expect for hurricane season. But the one thing that really, and this is kind of where we could start out here, I suppose, that I was curious about talking to him about is I saw a headline the other day about the Antarctic ice shelf is expanding. So welcome, Justin. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good, JD. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Good. And Addison says hello, by the way. So he's my board op tonight. But at any rate, yes, we're talking about that article, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, but I'm just going to read it right. I saw it on X, but I saw it in some other places as well. And this is for our global warming friends or climate change friends. Now, I stated at the very beginning of the show, and I'll state it again, I do believe in climate change. I just don't think it's man-made. And there's a lot of arguments for that. We won't get into all of them tonight. But other than to say that one of the big things that they've said year over year, and I remember back with the Inconvenient Truth with our buddy Al Gore, was talking about how the ice shelf was shrinking and the polar bears were dying. And of course, I think I heard just years ago that the polar bears have almost doubled in population or more. But more importantly, though, the ice was receding for a little while, and I believe that is climate change. Of course, that happens. That's happened over hundreds, if not thousands of years. But the article says Antarctica reverses the trend and gains ice for the first time in decades, according to a new study published by the Science China Earth Sciences. And it says researchers say from 2021 to 2023, the Antarctic ice sheet saw a record mass gain. And then it goes into saying that the university researchers say satellite grammetry data shows that from 2011 to 2020, it lost about 142 gigatons of ice per year. But that trend flipped 2021 to 2023 when the ice sheet allegedly gained about 108 gigatons. So it's not quite what it lost for the gain back, but it's gaining back is the point. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing, and you don't think about the ice shelf too much down in Antarctica because most of us, we don't really travel down there to experience it. But yeah, it has been gaining over the last couple of years. It's just, is that trend going to continue? And it's something that we just have to wait to see what's going to happen. But it's interesting because, like you had mentioned, the whole climate change thing, and is this going to fix it? Is this going to be a long-term thing of who knows, but is it more of a cycling thing that's happening is the bigger question on what's going to happen. As you had mentioned, is climate change, do you believe in it? Yeah, I mean, you can believe in climate change, and it for sure is a thing. It's just the bigger question, is climate change new? And the question, or the answer to that question, is no. I mean, climate change is always happening, and it will continue to change. It's based on so many different variables, and things only stay for so long over such a period of time,
we talk about climate change and what's been reported over the years. What's one of the more egregious things like that? Well, that didn't happen. What's one thing that just kind of really surprised you? And there's probably many, but what's one thing that really surprised you about we're not there?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different things that go along with it, but I think the big one from, I don't know if it was from the 70s or what it was, or the 80s, but I think the whole eastern seaboard was supposed to be underwater by now, and really that sea level really hasn't changed at all.
Now, other than, excuse me, we were talking at the beginning of the program about Justin Storm. So I'm sure people in the audience are like, that is a fake name. That is not real. That is about as fake as climate change. No, I'm just stating. But that's a fake name. That's a radio name. Tell us the Justin Storm story. I want to know, how did you end up going into meteorology? This is just, and your teachers and classmates must have been like, seriously, did you change your name to join this class?
Yeah, seriously, this guy's name is Justin Storm. He's going to school for weather. Well, it's basically, kind of forced into it. I mean, my last name's Storm. You kind of have to go into meteorology with that last name. And if you're going to get into any broadcasting or anything like that, well, I think Storm's a pretty cool last name. Who's not going to want a storm on their radio program or on their TV station? So I kind of thought it might help me get a job down the road as well. But in all seriousness, I've always had just a big fascination with weather ever since I was a kid. And when I had to decided I was going to be going to a university or for college, I was like, well, why don't we give this a shot since I have absolutely no idea what I want to do with my life? Why don't we try weather? Because it's something I have an interest in. And from there, it just kind of blossomed into the career that I've been able to establish so far. I kind of started that journey back in 2016 and put several years into broadcasting, a little bit into some part-time in between research as well, and then just kind of learning new things that had kind of just been discovered with meteorology and whatnot. And it's not fully adapted yet, but it will eventually become the new way for long-term forecasting, which is a very interesting thing. It's kind of a groundbreaking thing right on that cusp or that leading edge before it becomes well known, and we're just trying to work on that to really get it out there and let people know what it is that you can accurately forecast several months in advance in terms of what precip outlooks are going to look like across the entire United States and across the world, for the matter of fact. You could apply this worldwide, but we primarily focus, or at least I do, in the United States or the Northern Plains. And you can use that for tornado season, for severe weather outbreaks, for hurricanes, all sorts of different weather applications you can use this type of technology with. So that's been something really fun to kind of learn about and get a firsthand experience using it and finding new things that you can use it for and just its reliability.
And I assume you're talking about the LRC?
Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the LRC, the LEZAC recurring cycle. And for any of the affiliates around Kansas City, you probably are fairly familiar with the last name LEZAC. That's Gary LEZAC. He used to be their chief meteorologist out of Kansas City for several years. And this is the guy who ended up or ultimately discovered the LRC or refined it to what it is today and what we're using it for. And that's accurately predicting severe weather outbreaks. I mean, you get a 2-day heads up like, there's probably going to be some pretty bad weather that's going to come through Kansas City, or through the southeast is expecting a major tornado outbreak in like 3 days. Well, we can tell you that something like that is very probable or most likely going to happen on or near this specific day, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 18 weeks, 6 months potentially into the future to let you know that those events are coming, and then you can apply that to hurricane season as well.
Well, and it's funny, you were talking to me about this, as I've known you, that you weren't always a believer in this, right? Because people are listening like, well, come on, they can't even forecast the weather for tomorrow, let alone months from now or weeks from now.
The guy that's wrong 50% of the time gets paid 100% of the time. But, it's definitely something that most people are like, you hear that, you can forecast to a high level of accuracy for 6 months out. You're like, no, get out of here. This guy's a quack. You can't be doing that. You're going to tarnish your reputation and your credibility. And a lot of people will consider that you can't. It's impossible, because those in the field, it's not something that was taught in school or something that's widely adopted or whatnot. It's something that's brand new, and things that are brand new usually don't become popular until the person that discovered them is long gone. And it's been proven to be right. But when I first got introduced into this whole thing, I was like, no, there's no way that you can forecast no more than 2 weeks into the future with any high level of accuracy. And, I was pretty skeptical about it. I followed it very closely, of hanging maps up of weather stuff on my office, going all the way around the room. And sure enough, there's something to this, and that the weather patterns are actually cycling overhead. The jet stream that flies or flows 18,000 to 30-some thousand feet above your head, that produces the weather that affects us down here at the surface. And that weather pattern up aloft is cycling over and over again. And these cycles are yearly, and they could potentially be longer than that, but that requires way more digging into to find that out. But what we've discovered is that the weather patterns cycle over and over again until a new pattern sets up. So every fall, when the sun sets at the North Pole and it fully goes darkness at the beginning of October, this unique weather pattern starts in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and then that weather pattern is going to be X amount of days long. And once you identify when that first main feature that came through in October comes back around, say 30, 60, 70 days later, you nail down how long that cycle length is. And once you know how long that cycle length is, you can forecast all the storms that rolled through that time period. You can project it through December, January, February, all the way through September until that pattern breaks down and a new one sets up that following year.
Well, let's hold that thought for a second. We're going to go to break here, and when we come back, we'll continue that point. We're with Justin Storm here, meteorologist, and you could give us a call, 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ with an S on anything you want, including any questions about this, and we'll be back here just a little bit. Go nowhere, folks.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
J.D. Lake filling in for Rich tonight. Rich is off until Monday. He's got a family milestone, so he's going to be out for a few days, but I'm pitching in tonight. We're talking with Justin Storm here. He's a meteorologist and just an overall smart guy. And I got a message during break from someone that says, but AI said if I donate money, I can help climate change, Justin. I'm assuming that was Google AI. That might be Gemini, but I don't think that was Grok. So you might want to put that into Grok.
I'll just give you my Cash App handle and we can get that flowing.
Yeah, exactly. And what's your Venmo account number? No. So we were talking about... the LRC, which for those that don't know, it is a way to predict weather patterns, and you can predict them pretty. Finish your explanation there, how you could simplify that for the listening audience, because I know it's kind of complex, but you were just talking at the end about
it's a very complex thing, and you can break it down to make it sound so simple, but there's so many things that go into it. But basically all that it is every fall at the beginning of October, a unique weather pattern sets up. It's a unique number of days long, and then that specific cycle will cycle over and over again through the winter, spring, and summer until it breaks down in late summer to early fall, and a new pattern sets up that following October. So it's a yearly cycle that these weather patterns continue to do, and they are directly related to things that have happened in the past. So say like Kansas City just had a line of storms that rolled through the last couple of days. That portion of the LRC pattern was directly related to a major snowstorm that hit there in I believe it was the beginning of January, and it deposited like 11 inches of snow. It's like a 2-day blizzard. It was a huge mess down there. And then that weather pattern that brought snow along the Gulf Coast around the 20th of January, that came back around 6 weeks later, and no, they didn't get snow on the Gulf Shore on the beaches, but the Southeast got another round of snow, and the orange crops and the panhandle of Florida drop down or near to freezing again, because the weather pattern that we're in right now this year is roughly 6 weeks long. So every 6 weeks, to a degree, the weather patterns aloft that produce the weather at the surface cycle over and over. So you can predict that when those storms are going to come through, like that big severe weather outbreak that was throughout the Southeast, I believe that was at the end of April. That will be coming back around in the end. Would that be 6 weeks from that'd be the end of May and beginning of June, I believe, is when that comes back around. Sure, it'll lift a little further north, so this might be more, say, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Central Plains, but it's going to happen again every 6 weeks to a degree.
Yeah, and with that, so you've obviously reviewed this, and you talked a little bit about some of the storms the other day. What do you kind of see here for the spring, summer season? I guess anywhere in particular in the country, the middle, up here in the northern plains, or east or west coast for storm activity, drought, what have you. your crystal ball right now with the LRC, or just what you're seeing in your other guides?
Sure. Well, we're kind of going through a quiet period of the pattern right now in terms of severe weather. As a whole, the severe weather season has been pretty active. We've crossed that 700 tornado threshold, which is about 200 some over average. And that's just compared to years past, what we would normally see. You average them all out. But we're going to see that activity starting to tick back up again as we head towards the middle and end of May and into that first couple of weeks of June. You'll notice that you're going to start hearing more about those outlooks being issued for severe weather across the central, southern, and areas of the East Coast. You'll get those to come up again. In terms of precip across it, it's going to be a dry, it's going to be a warm year. Let's just put it straightforward. There are going to be areas that remain wet, say northern Texas through Oklahoma, parts of southern Kansas. We'll see some amount more of rainfall compared to normal, say like around 100 to 130% right now is what it's looking like. So that will be considered one of those wet areas. And then as you go through Arkansas and then up through eastern Tennessee, up towards Ohio, that's going to be another area that's going to see more above rainfall than normal. Around the Great Lakes will be a wet spot, and then northern California into eastern Washington are going to be areas that will receive more than average rainfall this year. The rest of the region is going to be staying near or below average. Areas of the Dakotas and into western Nebraska looking like that's going to be one of the main drought areas. And the main drought area this year right now is projected to be through the desert southwest, southern California, most of Arizona, Utah, and Nevada.
Can you get time to stick around for a few more minutes?
I sure do. We can talk a little bit about hurricanes after this if you want.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted you to kind of tease what the hurricane season looks like because we have a lot of listeners that are down on the East Coast and the Gulf area, Gulf of America, down south. So, yeah, stick around, folks. We'll be back here with Justin Storm, our meteorologist, and you can call us at 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ. Go nowhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
J.D. Lake filling in here for Rich Valdez tonight. Gosh, he's got the best bumper music. I just love all the instrumentals. But we're talking with Justin Storm here for a few more minutes. And when we went to break, we wanted to ask him. He's our meteorologist friend, and we were going to talk to him about, hey, what's the hurricane season look like? So go. You got a couple minutes there, Justin.
Yeah, and I just wanted to throw out, we were talking about the LRC before, and if anyone's interested more about learning about it, you can always shoot me an email, jstorm@weather2020.com, or if you want to just take a look at it yourself, you can download a free app. It's called the Global Predictor, and that will give you a forecast for anywhere in the entire world. And it's powered by the LRC, so you could check that out if you want to take a look at it or learn more about it, weather2020.com. But in terms of the hurricane forecast, here's what it's expecting using that LRC methodology. And this is going on a 3-year average of being the number one forecaster for hurricane seasons through Weather 2020. And they're issuing an expected around 20 named storms for this year, with an above average amount of storms and strength of storms, with the main target for this year, at least the potential for the most landfalls coming in on the areas of the Gulf of America. Texas is looking like it will be the main spot, and then those subcategories are going to be Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, the eastern coast of Florida, and then North and South Carolina is where those highlighted areas are for this year. The main threats, there's 5 warnings that we had issued for this coming in mid to late August throughout the Gulf of America, being one storm, a second one coming in at the end of August to the beginning of September is when that second one is coming through around Texas. And then 3 more coming in along the East Coast throughout the rest of that in the beginning and middle of September is when those are going to peak.
Well, good stuff, Justin. Appreciate you joining so much. Thanks, friend. And again, you can reach him at Justin Storm Weather 2020. And thanks so much for listening, folks. And we'll be right back after the top with some topics.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to America at Night, our last hour. I am not Rich Valdez, as you can tell. I'm J.D. Lake hosting up in the beautiful WDAY AM 970 Fargo, North Dakota studios. Hanging out tonight with you. Thanks for sticking around with me for hour 3. Rich will be back, though, on Monday. He's just off for a family milestone for the next few days. So we have some other hosts for tomorrow and Friday. But I'm, like I said, hanging out for the rest of the third hour here. Taking your calls to 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ. And that's with an S, as you know. So, we were talking before break about some of the business news of the day, and just with tariffs and so forth. And I wanted to play one more clip on this topic before we kind of close this out and go on to some other stuff. But this was Peter Navarro talking about what the tariffs are going to do in the short and the long term. And I'll bring up some current headlines and a couple more business things, actually. So second to last business item. Why don't you play the Peter Navarro clip, please?
The truth is I did this for 30 years, Jesse, in my private life, did these economic numbers. This was the best negative print I have ever seen because it looked like there was no growth in the economy. But the way this works is the growth is consumption plus investment, government spending, and net exports, where net exports are how much we send them versus how much we buy. Right. Consumption was great. Investment was off the charts, 22%, Jesse.
So that's big.
And all those guys who showed up CEOs, those are the ones making that. What took us down was the imports because they're all coming in ahead of the tariffs, just squirreling stuff away. So that's like a one-shot deal. And like I got on CNBC, other network, in the morning. The futures are way down. They start talking about this thing, and by the end of the day, things are fine.
Everyone's fine.
Because that's the reality of the Trump world. And it's all Trump policy. That's the beauty of it. Everything that we're doing is making the economy better, and the best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come. I love Navarro. There's some love-hate with some of these people. I get it with folks. But generally speaking, I mean, Trump's got some great, great people around him. Especially when it comes to the economy, and we are going to see some victories on this. Speaking of which, we were talking last hour about, Trump was teeing up a big announcement. He said really, really big yesterday, and that it was going to be very positive too, which was, thank the Lord, good to hear. And I'm looking at a headline right now on citizenfreepress.com. It's like my kind of go-to. It's kind of like Drudge Report, but conservative. Trump to announce first trade deal tomorrow with Great Britain. Is that it? Don't know. It's interesting. I think we're going to start to see a cascade of these trade deals. We're gonna get sick of winning. We're gonna get sick of hearing about the trade deals. Now, interestingly enough, I see another headline that says Trump big announcement revealed, and it says Trump to pitch sweeping Medicare drug price plan. So maybe that's it. I don't know. He said it would be announced, though, Thursday, Friday, or Monday. So kind of hoping that, that we get something, some good news there. But, what do you think of the whole situation with the tariffs and, what is it doing to you? And we played clips last week about that was a Frank Lunn's focus group that had a bunch of people on, just normal, everyday people like you and I, asking, look, what's this doing to your 401ks? And the consensus was not much. And if it was, you shouldn't be watching your account day in and day out because there's ebbs and flows all the time, right? Market corrections, other things that happen. And there was plenty of that up and down with Biden as well. So, again, what's your thoughts on that? You can give us a call. We have some lines open still, and we'll take some calls here in just a little bit. Let's see here if we have anybody. We have it looks like Jerome from Charleston, South Carolina. He's on WTMA. and he's got some comments about Canada. What do you got there for us, Jerome?
Oh, Canada, glorious and free, we not for sale. What part of not for sale do you not understand, Donnie Trump? They're not for sale.
Well,
didn't you hear him say?
I did. So I take it you don't think they're going to be the 51st state?
No, not the 51st, not the 52nd, not the 53rd. And when I say it, I really believe it. It ain't gonna happen. Come on, would you imagine the outrage in Canada if they sold out to the good old U.S. of A? It ain't gonna happen, man. Hey, and Gaza ain't gonna be the some kind of vacation spot
Dubai
for the Palestinians. Okay, that ain't gonna happen. And by the way, are we gonna have anything on the shelves we can buy for Christmas? Because after you lose $6 trillion in the stock market, I don't know if I can trust. I never trusted them anyway. Hey, if Obama had lost $6 trillion on the stock market, Fox would be putting in a whole new TV network, crushing him. Okay, he'd be crushed.
Well, I do actually agree with you on that point. And Jerome, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say you didn't vote for Trump. Is that right?
Bingo, bing, 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 bing. Like what Trump said, bing, bing, bong, boom, bing, bong,
It was
boom.
something. It was something about what you said. Now, I will say this. Thanks for the call, by the way, Jerome. I will say this about damaging Canada. I don't know. I mean, I kind of agree that we probably are doing some damage up there with some of the trade deals, and hopefully some of those trade deals will start to come to fruition. I mentioned the Britain one that's going to be announced tomorrow at the top of the hour, and I really believe that Mark Carney meeting this week with Canada was a good thing. I mean, Mark Carney tried to puff his chest a little bit, but he's just a very, very liberal man, as you guys know. And I believe he's all on board with pretty much the New World Order. If you do a little looking into his background, but I will say this with Canada too. We have some good listeners up there, and one of them called last week from Montreal. I know another one, like I mentioned earlier in the program, Lisa. She's listening rather in Hamilton, which is in Toronto. But I was kind of seeing an article earlier that kind of grabbed my attention with Alberta is making a move to secede from Canada and become the 51st state. And I dug into it, and I mean, there's definitely truth behind it. Alberta is definitely more conservative than most of the provinces up there. But I also read the other part of the article where the Canadian government's kind of going through the motions because it's democratic. But yeah, that probably won't happen. I would hope it would happen. That'd be great. That's where all the oil is too. So can that happen? I don't know. Getting back to just a couple odds and ends from last hour, I said Justin Storm's email address wrong. It is jstorm@weather2020.com. So you can reach him there if you have any questions on the LRC or anything that we talked about. Let's see here. What else do we have going on? I saw a couple pop culture things. I'll mention a couple things here before we go to break that I thought was kind of interesting. Did you see Ellen DeGeneres, or as I call her, Ellen Degenerate? She is having some problems in the UK. We were talking about the UK a little bit ago. She's having some problems adjusting over there. LOL. And I was reading an article about her, and she is it's hilarious. She's out on a riding lawnmower, and she's really kind of depressed that she is over there. I don't blame her so much. But yeah, good on her. And I was also seeing too. Sean Penn, Venezuela is calling, and there was an article about Venezuela and how nice of a country that is right now. See if I could find that really quick here before the break. Yeah, here it is here. Blackouts, 162% inflation remind Venezuelans of worst of crisis. So Venezuelan seems like it's awesome, and that's Sean Penn. He came out all those years ago and said how much he looked up to the leader there and how great of a place it was. And this is nothing against the Venezuelan people. I know they're suffering, but that's the point. Is that we live in a pretty dang good country. Well, we're going to come back here in a little bit with your calls. Again, that's 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ. And we're going to get into, we talked a little bit last week about kind of some unity, but I want to talk a little bit more about that and just kind of what we can agree on. And again, Jerome that just called, I don't know that we could agree on much with him, but there probably is something. But again, being cordial to each other. And I want to get into also, I've seen an awful lot of videos about where people are just, I'll just state it, emotionally out of control. And that is a hard thing and something that we're sadly rewarding in society with all of the coverage that we give some of these various videos and events that happen, and people just being emotionally out of control. And I want to give some very specific examples. And again, take your calls on the topic or any topic that you have on your mind. So hang out. I'm J.D. Lake filling in for Rich Valdez. Go nowhere. We'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Welcome back to America at Night. I am J.D. Lake hosting for Rich Valdez. We'll be back on Monday. We're taking your calls, as you heard the number there a second ago, so you could talk to us about anything tonight. We had some guests at the beginning of the show. You can have questions about that or just anything. I'm talking, kind of going back and forth with the economy, and we've been talking a little Canada. Something I wanted to play for you is a little clip. Jerome, our caller from South Carolina, he's a funny guy. We like Jerome, and we like anybody to call, no matter if you agree with everything I'm saying or not. And we were talking about Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, and got a short clip of him going back and forth with Trump on whether or not he would is he for the Canada being the 51st state. And you tell me.
The president has made known his wish about that issue for some time. I've been careful always to distinguish between wish and reality. I was clear there in the Oval Office, as I've been clear throughout on behalf of Canadians, that this is never going to happen. Canada is not for sale. It never will be for sale. Some things, as I said in the room, some things are never for sale. And he agreed with that.
And if you could see the look on Trump's face when they were next to each other in the Oval Office and he was saying something like that, and Trump kind of smiled like, anything can happen. So I kind of agree. I mean, again, it's like what I told you earlier about the renaming of Gulf of America. We were talking energy earlier, right? And with the energy policy, one of the things that people forgot about is there is leases, oil, gas, etc., and that excuse me, are under the Gulf of Mexico language. You change that name, you change that lease, right? You change the law essentially by renaming something like that. There is a method to Trump's madness. So I know everybody chuckles on the 51st state, but they chuckle about a lot of things, and Trump follows through with them. So interesting to see where he goes with this in the long term. A lot of people think that it was Trump's language that pushed Mark Carney in. Versus, I forget the conservative's name up there. I have it on the tip of my tongue. I just can't pronounce it correctly. But Pierre something, I believe. But nonetheless, again, Trump knew what he was doing with the language and, bringing Canada together, some of the liberal parts of it. And it's funny, though. I did see some, don't want to get too conspiracy theorist on anybody here, but, saw some headlines today about ballots being taken in and out of homes and in and out of vehicles and just in some precarious ways up there for their election. And I wouldn't put it past them, right? They need to be a liberal government. I mean, they're just that's just what they are. We thought, and again, be careful what you wish for. Everybody thought Justin Trudeau was that way, and look who we have now. I mean, it remains to be seen with Mark Carney, but I can kind of tell you where I think it might be going. Looks like we might have another caller here, or two. So let's see here. Maybe go to Steve from Keokuk, Iowa. He is on KOKX, and you were want to talk about gas and cars that need a relay steam. I don't know. So maybe explain that a little bit there, Steve.
You were talking about oil and gas and everything, and it's like our country has suppressed information from the public. Back in 1920, there was 3 vehicles on the market to see which one would be pressed off for public display. One was an all-electric vehicle, one was a gasoline vehicle, and the one was a steam engine vehicle. And the only reason the gasoline vehicle took off with the Model T was the hand crank electric start, which was merging 2 types of vehicles together to create that. However, when you have an electric vehicle and you drive it from one point to another point and it dies, then you recharge it and you drive it from that point back to the initial point you started, you will lose footage. However, there's a simple solution that no one's considered, and I don't understand why. Because they converted, the gas and electric to make the modern car. Why don't they convert a relay to where, after 5 minutes of the car running on gas, it switches over to steam? And I think that would be a genius idea and far better than an all-electric car.
Well, and I completely agree with you, right? I mean, we know the things that are problems with electric cars, particularly the rare earth minerals, right? Rare earth, they're rare. And they're very hard to dig up. We're dealing with, as you've heard in the news, the Ukrainian mineral deal, right? We're trying to get away from getting all these rare earth from China, but that's one problem. Obviously, to dispose of the car batteries is another problem, right? Because they're highly flammable. In fact, you'll see that when there's a fire, wherever they're at a house or on the side of the freeway, the fire departments just let these things burn because they burn so hot. And then there's a weight issue, as in they're so heavy that they go through tires and brakes exponentially faster. And yes, they do have brakes. I understand the regenerative process on a lot of vehicles, but there still is braking. And they go through those brakes, and brakes are made of more or less toxic material, more of that on our road, more tires being burned through. Have you heard, I'm just real curious, Steve, have you heard of a gentleman named, and let's see if I pronounce his name right, Casey Puich? He built one of the most efficient cars in the world, and he was on a podcast recently talking about it, that it gets 100 miles the gallon, and he made this quite a while back, and it can accelerate 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. Have you heard about this at all? I'm just curious.
I haven't heard about that, but a steam engine would use less than that, because if you have a gas, here's what I'm talking about, though. If you have a gas car, imagine if you can convert your radiator to your gas tank and your gas tank to your radiator. And a relay would, to where the gas, you won't need that much gas because you're running on water, steam. Because when you start your car and you drive 5 miles, you can't undo that radio cap because you burn your hand. And that means the water is ready that quick. You'll stop using gas almost instantly if you had a way to convert it from the gas motor to a speed motor.
I'm with you 100%. Thanks for the call, Steve. Appreciate that from Iowa down there. And we'll come back from the break, and I'm going to just chat a little bit more and finish that point off, and we'll take more of your calls. So go nowhere, folks. We're just got about 30 minutes left.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
J.D. Lake filling in for Rich. Rich is going to be back on Monday. He's at a family milestone. He might talk to you about that next week. We're in here for him tonight, though, and guest hosting, and then we'll have some other folks in tomorrow and Friday. We're taking your calls, too. You heard the number just a second ago. I wanted to bring up, I want to finish the point, actually. Before the break, we were talking about, different vehicles, like, he was talking a steam engine. I was talking just one that I saw from this Casey Puich. He was actually on the Tucker podcast a while back with that, if you're looking for that episode. It's very fascinating. He made this car with Casey made this car with all used parts. Gets 100 miles a gallon, 0 to 60, whatever I said, 5 seconds, I think is what it was. And just fascinating. But here's my opinion. Anybody ever see the movie Tucker? We were just talking about Tucker on the podcast, but Tucker, the movie, I think it's with Jeff Bridges, from quite a number of years ago, and some people may even own Tuckers that are listening, because there was a handful of them made, I think about 70 or so, but they were just very, very advanced for their time. They had headlights that followed where you turned. I believe they had power brakes, which wasn't a thing. It was a power disc. I can't remember. There was a number of very revolutionary things that none of the big three had at that time, and the big three squashed them. And they squashed them hard. They went, there's these scenes in the movie, I don't want to give too much away, but Howard Hughes is involved with Tucker. Howard Hughes is a, amazing inventor in his own right. But he was very paranoid, obviously. And he was giving him advice because the steel companies weren't providing him steel, because, all the three, I won't mention their names in case they ever advertise, but they all got together and just, went against him. And then Tucker, it faded away, right? That's kind of what I thought of when I thought about, what the gentleman said. He made a lot of sense about steam, but also even this gentleman that was on that podcast talking about the car that he built. It's a tough business out there if you're coming up with. Ask Elon Musk, right? He a lot of people thinks he's just cruising nice with Tesla before he got into the White House, but that was tough coming up, building a car company from nothing. Even though it's electric, and maybe even harder because it was electric. So, getting in, and I'm sure he would have a lot of good stories about that. One other quick headline I wanted to bring up. We've been talking a lot of business throughout the show, but this one caught my eye today. Just want to get your opinion on it as the audience. So, there's been a lot of stuff, talk about the job market, right? We talked earlier about GDP, and we were talking about jobs numbers, and they're up, right? They're up in the private sector, particularly for the current period. This one was right from the Wall Street Journal, and the title is High School Juniors. Listen to what I'm saying. High school juniors are getting offered $70,000 a year to come out of high school and go right into a trade. Now, you hear Mike Rowe constantly talk about this, right? He's such a big proponent of the trades. And I was reading this article, and it basically says this particular, I believe it's Elijah Rios, won't graduate from high school until next year, right? So 2026. But he already has a job offer, and one that pays $70,000 a year. And that's because, and he's a junior right now, and he's taking welding classes. And these employers are dealing with shortages and all this stuff, right? HVAC, electricians, plumbing. I know tons of these businesses around where I live, up here broadcasting in Fargo, North Dakota, WDAY AM 970. And I'm telling you, if you had a choice, and think about this, this kid's he's 17 years old right now. He's already got almost a six-figure job, right? $70,000 a year, which is a great wage compared to what a lot of college grads get, unless you're like a lawyer or a doctor, right? But think of the amount of schooling that either one of those takes. But think of just the normal schooling for most people. It's 4 to 5 years, and they're coming out in a lot of cases with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, $250,000 worth of debt. And then they're trying to find a job that barely pays, I don't know, $50,000 or whatever their profession is. And this kid is going to be 5 years behind them, right, or ahead of them, I guess you would say. And that kid by the time that other one, if there was a comparable 17-year-old that graduates from college in that 4 to 5 years with that $250,000 worth of debt that I was referring to, he's now gonna be at six figures or above this kid that's doing the welding. And again, they're coming out with all that debt. It's amazing where you could be. And I'm sure I'm making a lot of sense to a lot of folks who are listening with their kids. And I know how a lot of my friends are advising their kids. And I got a good friend of mine, his daughter's a nurse. She's going to have a job forever, right? I talk about something that's in demand. So, yeah, I decided to bring that up. It's just kind of a cool headline and just tells you there is real money behind a lot of these jobs. And it may not even be, when it's in a trade like that, if it's HVAC, it may not even be down in the weeds installing HVAC equipment. Maybe it's something else in HVAC or something else being an electrician. But again, pays very well. Let's see here. I think we got another call here. Let's go to, looks like Tony is from Montreal, Canada. And I was talking about Montreal earlier, and I like that you're a conservative Canadian. Talk to me about the pipeline.
Yeah, how you doing, Mr. Lake? I appreciate you taking the call, and I was really pretty happy that you mentioned Toronto again and your friend in Toronto, and you mentioned your friend in Montreal, and definitely a friend of Rich Valdez, and I definitely appreciate listening to conservative radio, and I've been listening all night while I'm working, and it's great to hear a truly conservative voice in America. I said to Rich one time, you are like in the old days in the 60s, if you remember, Radio Free Europe, right? It was an American type of radio station, and I think it's Radio Free America right now when I listen to you guys. And let me tell you something. We believe 100% in traditional America, whether it's traditional America, United States, or traditional Canada. We believe that we should live a traditional lifestyle. We should come back to where we were. We were successful with biofuels in this country, in Canada. We should never have given up biofuels. We can always develop alternative sources of energy, and that would be the intelligent thing to do. But the technology there is not up to snuff, and it cannot compete with oil. We live in a country, Mr. Lake, that it comes most of the year, 10 months of the year, we're in the winter months. And during those winter months in Canada, we can go up to minus 30, 40, and even 50 up north. No electric vehicle will save our lives. Diesel and gas will save our lives. It is impossible to run a winter country on those electric cars, which are going to cost us billions and billions of dollars of infrastructure was not there. Ford, when he developed the Model T, he didn't ask the government for subsidies. He built it on his own. He delivered it on his own, and he produced the Model T. I think could run off of corn fuel originally. So, innovation is there in the capital markets. It's there through capitalism, and we do not support the majority of Canadians. I think we're at a 50-50 split now. Who knows if it's 51-49? But Canada is a conservative country, even though the Americans believe we're a socialist country. We are not a socialist country. There are many people that believe what I believe in. And we do not despise Donald Trump. We understand that his interest is to promote his country's interest. And my question to my country is, why didn't our prime ministers have the same interest in promoting our country's interest many, many years ago? Donald Trump lit the fire. And why? I asked, I mentioned to Rich Valdez, we have interprovincial tariffs, 300% tariffs blocking dairy products coming into Quebec or Montreal. Why do we have interprovincial tariffs when we're arguing with the states about 25% tariffs? That's hypocritical. And, you guys have a free trade commerce between states. It's illegal to block trade on interstate commerce. Well, how about Canada? Canada doesn't respect that rule, and we're attacking the United States. I just want to say one last thing. I mentioned this once before when I talked to Rich. Yeah, when Germany was unified, the then person who was in charge said that Germany has no permanent enemies, no permanent friends. Germany only has permanent interests, and that is the same thing as what Trump is saying. He has a permanent interest. He has no permanent enemies and no permanent friends, and he wants to promote the idea of the United States being number one. Why can't the rest of the world understand that? Why can't Canada have the same philosophy in government that we want to promote our own country as number one? And we don't need the United States to protect our borders or our seas. We should have a military that does that. We should have a lot of things that we have been free riding. We have been free riders on American military, on American economic strength. So we have to wake up. We have to get stronger, and we have to stand on our 2 feet. And we definitely cannot do that with a liberal government. We need a conservative government that respects low taxes, respects the middle class. And like you said, why aren't our kids going to get trades as a decent way of earning a living and paying taxes? I know it's a lot that I said, but that's what I believe.
No, amen, Tony. And hang out for just a second. I'm real curious, trying to keep it on things on a positive note tonight, and you're spot on about everything. But I was curious, I've talked about Mark Carney, and I'm sure you're very well aware of who he is, especially being in Montreal, right where the government is, in the capital. But is there anything positive that I'm missing that he can provide Canada that Justin Trudeau did not? Just anything you can think of.
Okay, so Justin Trudeau is the bottom of the barrel. You can't get any worse than that. So, in a barrel of rotten apples, you might find 2 or 3 apples that are fine, but still eating them might be poison and you might die. So I'm not saying that I think that, Carney is equal or low, as bad as Sip, but you got to understand that Carney was the puppet master. And I always say every circus needs a Carney. Every circus needs a Carney clown. Carney is a carnival huckster. He was an elitist. He was the former Bank of Canada governor, and he was the governor of Bank of Canada governor of Bank of England. He was thrown out of England because he created an inflationary marketplace. So I just want to say, do I support him? No. Is he my prime minister? No. I believe in a conservative government with Pierre Poilievre, where we are going to be a conservative government. Look, he was the puppet master controlling of the Trudeau government. So he is the same as Trudeau.
Yeah, we gotta go, Tony, to a break here. But yeah, Pierre Poilievre, that's the name I was after. And thanks I hope he remains in politics. And thanks so much for the call behind enemy lines there. I say enemy, I'm just kidding, folks. And it's also going to be a tariff-free call. But we'll be back after the break, and we'll play some more clips and take more of your calls. So don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to America at Night. I am J.D. Lake. I'm guesting for Rich tonight. And we were taking calls before the break, but I wanted to get into a couple last-minute things. I've been talking a little bit about some unity the past couple shows that I've been on, and just bringing the temperature down a bit, right? And I saw Kelsey Grammer's got this, I believe it's a Fox Nation series, and I'm just looking it up right now, but I think it's the Battle of Concord, something. But nonetheless, he is being interviewed by a Fox host, and he's just talking about the state of the country right now. And what he was talking about more specifically is the host asked him, could a Cheers even be done today? Right? Not that the content's bad, Cheers, the TV show, I mean. Not that the content's bad or anything controversial or nefarious, but is just, you used to sit down in front of that and they get, whatever it was, 30 million or 50, whatever, however many people watched it. Is there anything like that that you can think of in recent memory for a sitcom that you could just sit down and watch, that people would kind of gather together and they could all relate to the characters? And he says some interesting things about government and why, and some of the calls that came in, it reminds me a lot of why they like to separate us, why they like to be divisive and keep us upset and always wondering about our identity, not just gender, but just identity as a conservative or liberal, or I hate you or I don't. And I thought he brought up a lot of great points. So we'll play this Kelsey Grammer. We'll come right back.
I was thinking about the sitcom success you had, and I was thinking about Happy Days. They had a reunion 6 months ago. and then they have all these classic shows that are having their reunions. And you said one in Cheers a year ago, and Frasier's coming back. When you guys were on with these series, MASH, there was 20, 30 million people watching. We had something in common. Are we ever going to have that again? If we had the quality of a Cheers or a Frasier, would America still stop and watch the same thing on network television again, or are we forever fractured?
Right. I think America will. I think we all need a good laugh. And of course, we haven't really had good laughs lately. We got ourselves sort of siloed into different worlds and different senses of culture, right? So that then we excluded one another from this. But honestly, we are one. This country really is one. We are one people. And the more politics and our cultural entertainment absorbs that fact and then kind of reflects it back at the audience, I think the audiences will increase again. The audience size will increase, participation will increase, because we've lost that common denominator that means we are all united. I guess it helps to separate people, to maintain power. If you want to confuse people about who they are, what their identity is, it's easier to control them. I do believe that's true, and I think that's been going on in politics for quite a while now. But I'd like to get that unifying message back, and I think Donald Trump's actually onto a lot of things. I think he's pointed in the right direction. The louder people scream about it, they identify themselves as the people who don't really want it to happen.
Isn't that just some truth bombs for you? Yeah, I mean, and I really like Kelsey. I mean, but it's just, I'm not sure, folks. What do you think? Do you think we're? I mean, do you think we could ever sit down like that again? Is there ever a situation you could think of like that? And by the way, that is he's talking about, I said the Battle of Concord. It's the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Apologies for that. But again, his point about, dividing people up is a good way to control them. And we're seeing that all over the world. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of an interesting clip to play. But yeah, so I can't believe we're about the end of the show already, folks. It just seems like it went by really fast. But we'll come back here after the break, and I got one more thing I want to talk about. Just a quick headline that came in the news I saw since we started regarding the Surgeon General. A name was pulled today, and a new name was put in, and I'm going to tell you who that was. So you're going to want to stick around. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
J.D. Lake hosting for Rich tonight. Rich is going to be back on Monday. He'll be out on the next couple days. He's got a family milestone he's celebrating. He might just tell you that next week, so stay tuned for that. I wanted to bring one last thing regarding the Surgeon General. So Trump pulled the nominee. It was, I'm just kind of looking through it here, Dr. Neshowit, and he replaced her with Casey Means. I talked about Casey Means last week when I was on the show, guesting on Thursday. And Casey is just awesome. She's been advising Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Trump all along. By the way, if you ever get a chance, listen to the podcast with Casey and her brother Callie. Excellent, excellent, excellent. That was done by Tucker last year. So I would highly recommend that. But she's going to be the new pick, and maybe she'll take care of this. I got one quick funny story to tell you. I'm looking through the news, and I see this X video about, it's from one of the big blue stores. We won't mention the name. And it's their brand of ice cream sandwiches. And I'm telling you, I'm going to make a point here. So this couple takes the ice cream sandwich and we want to see if this thing's going to melt and what it's made out of. They put it on the counter for a couple hours, actually overnight, and the thing didn't melt. What is that made out of? That's why Casey's going to be the Surgeon General, to get these terrible, terrible chemicals that are in these products, folks. And so I am J.D. Lake. Hopefully I'll be back soon. It was fun hanging out with you. Really appreciate Rich and the crew. And yeah, he'll be back on Monday. So enjoy the weekend and enjoy tomorrow's guest host. We'll see you then.